Hello everyone, welcome back to my series of psychological lectures. My name is Dr. Susan Kavaler-Adler. I'm a clinical psychologist and psychoanalyst, also a theorist in the field of psychoanalysis and particularly of object relations thinking with the British and American object relations theorists and my own theories evolving through those integration of those frameworks in my own thinking. Today I'm going to speak about another topic, which is love addiction. And love addiction has very little to do with love. It has nothing to do with love. In fact, it has to do with someone clinging in an attachment when they're not able to sustain the attachment with the person, and it has to do with a lack of self-esteem, but which also relates to generally an arrest, a developmental arrest in the person's self-development, so that they lack self-agency and the ability to assert their own voice and their own autonomy. So the love addict is craving love, but is too closed off to their inner self to be able to be at a level of having a capacity to love. So the love addict clings to those she wants to win over, but when rejected, she can't stop clinging to that person because of the attachment, the wish to be wanted and to be loved. However, in this case, I'm thinking of a woman I work with love addiction. I've worked with many people with this. But before they become healed through the therapeutic process, they lack an awareness of their own talents and abilities and intelligence. And in the cases I've worked with, the people have a profound level of intelligence and creativity and talent, but they're totally closed off to their inner self, so they're so reactive to others. They're other-directed, and not coming from within themselves and their own personality and their own opinions, their own feelings. They're instead reactive to others and to the whims of others and to the rejections of others. And it's called love addiction because they can't stop coming after those that reject them, wanting love, but they're not actually able yet to love. And when I've worked with this kind of a person who comes into treatment, into psychotherapeutic treatment, there usually is a critical time where they become attached to me as the therapist, and that allows them to have the inner feeling experience of the developmental process they need to go through to heal. As they become attached to the therapy, as they were attached to these others outside, they get a different response in therapy than they got from the other people who were rejecting them. So they're able to actually feel what they're longing for. And they feel the longing for love, and ultimately, after a lot of rage and anguish and hurt that they go through, and they actually can feel the mournful grief of the losses in their life that go back to very early, often trauma in the first 3 years of life when the self is first forming. And as they go through what I call developmental mourning, and I'm there with them on that journey, they open up to all of their own talents and abilities. Sometimes they're projecting those into the therapist, whoever the therapist is, along with whatever they actually see of the therapist's abilities, but they often project their unconscious and not yet realized abilities and talents and and some intelligence into the therapist. But through the mourning process, they begin to own what's within them. That's really their own talents and abilities, and as I said, profound talents and abilities in many cases. So my theme of developmental mourning is one of my theories that I have in books like Mourning Spirituality and Psychic Change, which came out in 2003 with Routledge, and actually got the Gradiva Award from NAAP. Or my seventh book also applies so much to the mourning process, and it's called Developmental Mourning, Erotic Transference and Object Relations, Psychoanalysis. These books, as well as all my articles and books, I do have 7 published books and over 70 articles. In some way, everything I write about has to do with a mourning process that can become the journey of developmental maturity and self-integration. So those are 2 of the books that have stories about the evolution of developmental mourning. And I wanted to share this because it's a misnomer to think of love addiction as having to do with love. It's really about an insecure clinging to another because of a wish to be loved, when the person doesn't feel lovable and doesn't feel aware of their own capacities and personality enough to feel they are worthy of love. So love addiction in the layman literature has been spoken about as women who love too much. That was a very popular trade book. But I write about it in my books, in professional books, where I write about actual clinical cases. And you can see how each person evolved through a therapeutic alliance with me that allowed them to have their attachment and to feel the feelings behind the addictive compulsion that they had when they're urging the other to try to love them when they can't open up to their capacity. So each of the cases shows the evolution. I have many different avenues of healing in my books. It's not all love addiction, but I do have some articles on love addiction, but whatever the cases are, they do relate to the theme of developmental mourning as a healing and self-integration process. Thank you for your sharing this with me today. Bye for now.